So we'll just start in then with the introduction, and then you want to bring up that first slide. So welcome to the first annual meeting of the Chester Fire Service Committee. The committee is a corporate body created by the municipality and the village of Chester to oversee the Chester Volunteer Fire Department. As the current fire service covers parts of both districts 3 and 7, as well as all of District 1. That's why there's both municipal interest as well as village commission. These areas all pay the same rates for the fire service. It's all covered by the department. Go ahead, Heather. Formerly a service agreement, it's now a partnership. The municipal residents requested a partnership rather than the service agreements, so the fire services was developed as a joint 50-50 ownership by the municipality and the village. The partnership is seen as a better alternative for balance and oversight of the department, as it covers both areas of the village and the two portions of the district. All assets of the department are co-shared 50-50 with the village and the municipality. Next slide. There are six members of the committee, 3 appointed by the village. Colin McDonald, who's chair, Jim Barkos, and Nancy Patch, followed by 3 from the municipality. Myself, Norm Countway, as the vice chair, and Kirk Colligan, who's treasurer and secretary, and James Robert, who will be leading us through some of the discussion regarding the environment. The committee is governed by an intermunicipal agreement and is administered by the village commission staff. Before we get down to the nuts and bolts of this meeting tonight, regarding the budgets for the department as well as new projects, I wanted to start off by addressing for a moment who the Chester Volunteer Fire Department is. It's 50 members of the community who donate their time and risk their lives to keep us safe in an emergency such as fires, floods, accidents, medicals, and more. They are your neighbors, your friends, and your family who leave their families, jobs, and personal activities when there's a call to go help somebody in the community in an emergency situation. Why does the department seem to be growing? Our climate is changing. We have floods, we have wildfires that we've never had before. Our community is changing. We have more homes, traffic. We have bigger buildings, different buildings, and our demands of life are changing. We're on call 24/7, people going all of the time. We have an aging population, many of which reside in this community, as well as family support is changing. It's a lot different today in a family unit than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and certainly 25 years ago. And technology and work is now mobile. Why should we be concerned about the fire service and the fire service committee? These volunteers are highly trained and are on call with are highly trained and are called upon virtually every day. And as Cody will report, or Chief Cody will report in his report on just how often we're called upon as a community. We call upon the fire department to help. We need to think long and hard about the commitment to the community, their commitment to the community, and the current facilities that we provide. Without change in support, our department is limited in meeting the needs of our growing and changing community. We need to recognize the operational needs of a modern fire department. We have high expectations of our volunteers who are members of the 911 team. When you phone 911, you talk to a person in dispatch who's a paid member of the organization who then turns around and decides if you need police, if you need ambulance service, or you need fire service. That person in dispatch, the police, and the ambulance service are all paid. Chester has the benefit of a volunteer service for its fire departments. And it's a huge, huge benefit to our community that sometimes I think we may take for granted. What's our alternative to a department that's a volunteer organization? There's a paid service that's extremely costly for both equipment, from both an equipment standpoint, facility standpoint, and staffing standpoint. You can simply look at any budget for a fire department within the HRM and see the costs that are associated with something like that. It's astronomical. By supporting our department, it strengthens our community. It brings about a sense of calm and confidence that we have such an amazing service. Just to step back for a second and remind everybody of the fire that we had at the Playhouse. And one building was burnt down and everything else was saved by volunteer service. Yes, they heard support from other services, but for our volunteers to make that happen and nothing else get destroyed is quite an accomplishment that we really, you know, as a community should recognize even more that, you know, we've got this sense, we've got this service that's being offered to us essentially for free. We need to also honor our heroes by providing the best equipment and facilities possible as they serve our community. We owe it to our members of the volunteer service our deepest gratitude for their service to protect us all in times of need. How does the new committee play a role in this? If you'd like to sort of have a look at the image there, or the diagram, the committee is responsible for the annual budgeting and guidance for the department. It helps to shape the 20-year capital plan and the strategy to be ahead of the curve for the community demand in the future. The committee will provide oversight for the view from a view of fiscal management to ensure and help ensure that, you know, we're aligning the costs with the needs of the community and the needs of the department. And finally, and probably most interestingly from most people's standpoint, is the planning for special projects such as the development of a new fire hall here in the community. This level of planning and support for the department is needed because of the increases in demand on our volunteers, on our equipment, and on our facilities, and it's alarming. This drives deeper consideration and support for the department, and hence the reason for a committee such as ourselves to help in that regard. Things that we also need to consider as we help provide information and guidance to the fire department's management group is recruitment and retention of volunteers, the national training standards, increase the commitments for the volunteers as emergencies become more complex. For example, there's a new training program coming up for SWIFT or fast water rescue that we never needed something like that before, and now we have to consider it. It was never there before. We have to identify and address the health and safety concerns of the members as they go to many more emergencies that involve fires that are plastics and chemicals, things of that nature. Our equipment facilities require greater budgetary oversight because most of the equipment is very expensive and it's growing in the expense and cost, and we need more of it because we have a growing community. As the community grows, it's going to result in more calls and more demand on our service. Climate, final discussion point is climate has driven a host of new emergencies that we haven't seen in the past, and who knows what we're going to see in the future. And we need to be prepared for that, and we need to help our firefighters and everybody within the organization to the best of our ability to make sure that they're there for us in an emergency situation. Before I pass it over to Chief Cody Stevens for his report, I wanted to leave you with something to think about. The growing needs of the community is straining the department. As we as a community must address those concerns and issues. We have high expectations for the service with no paid staff. Without support from us, the community, for our volunteers, we're at a critical junction in servicing the emergency needs of our community for the future without addressing some of the issues and concerns and getting the support from the community for the fire department. So at that point, we will have questions at the end of this meeting. Now I'll pass it over to Cody to discuss the fire reform. Thank you. Oh.
It's on.
It's on.
Where's the best place to stand? I just
That's right there. Or even next to the projector, whatever you're comfortable.
Well, then I got my back to these folks. So we're gonna try it this way. Good evening. I want to thank everybody that's here. You show your support, and you get your questions answered. We hope we can do all that. Once just shortly ago, I listened to a fella give a bit of a speech, and I'm going to use one of his words. I'm of the age I need notes and my glasses to read this, so you're going to have to bear with me. Although I've always needed my glasses, so that's irrelevant. Good evening. On behalf of the entire membership of the Chester Volunteer Fire Department, we want to say thank you for your support this past year. We could not have delivered this service to our community without your support. The year of 2023 was one for the history books. The CVFD responded to 357 emergency calls, which included structure fires, chimney fires, car fires, medicals, motor vehicle collisions, alarm sounding, rescues, and amongst other calls. We sent crews to the Barrington Lake wildfire, the largest wildfire ever seen in this province thus far. We sent relief crews to the incident in Brooklyn, along with a crew during the first night to help search. We've incorporated the new tanker, which I'm happy to report has been a great addition to the fleet. We've had a busy training schedule, including monthly practices and extracurricular training, including chimney fires, vehicle extraction, driver training, pump training, medical training, car fires, wildfire, and marine operations to name. We also participated in 2 mutual aid training sessions. One was a pumper relay practice supplying water to the Shoreham Village. The other was a heavy vehicle extraction practice focusing on school buses. We have 5 members currently participating in National Fire Protection Association 1001 Level 1 firefighter training. Our recruitment and retention efforts continue as we have over 45 active members currently. As we read the province's report, Weathering What's Ahead, Climate Change Risk and Nova Scotia's Well-Being, we have begun to try and understand how a change in climate could affect our community. Specifically, how to respond to major weather events. Projected in the report. We have commenced researching the necessity of having swiftwater rescue trained personnel and how we can implement this training into our system to acquire the skill set and to protect the community we serve. I thank you very much for your interest in coming tonight again. And for those that don't know me, I'm Chief Cody Stevens, and this is Deputy Chief Greg Conrad. And thank you again. I think Norman said questions you have to.
That's 1, 2, 3. That's still working. I'll say welcome to everybody tonight. For those who don't know me, my name is Kurt Collicutt. I've been a lifetime resident of Chester for the most part. And I joined the Fire Advisory Committee at its inception about 1.5 years ago. And for me, the driver was, we have an incredible group of men and women firefighters in our community, and as you heard the other two speakers here tonight, they're volunteers. And they give up their time and talent every day. I came from the food industry. I worked more than 50 years in it, and I was a senior director responsible for all aspects of the franchise division in Atlantic Canada. And tonight, along with Heather McClellan, who is the village clerk treasurer, we will present an overview of the proposed budget for 2025. And you can see on the slide there are really 3 buckets that we look at in the annual budget process. The first is the budget report, which is really a variance report for the 23-24 year. And what we do there with that is we look at the budget that we're operating with this year and the expenditures so far. And, you know, will we spend all of the money or will we run short? So we do that review. The second bucket there is obviously the fire department gets their revenue or the bulk of the revenue from the fire rate times the assessment in the municipality. So we'll look at what the fire rate could be for this budget year, and then we'll do a draft, or we've put together a draft fire budget for 24-25. Next slide. So there's a lot of work that goes into creating a budget. And I'm sure many of you in the room have experienced that and realize that, but there's a lot of work that happens. And, you know, the work really started late last year. And I know the fire department have been very integral in that and have gone through their expenditures and what they need line by line in preparation for the first meeting that we came to on January 15th. And there myself, along with Heather, the fire department with the chief and deputy chief, and we went through the budget, the variance report, really line by line, and looked at what was needed this year on the day-to-day stuff. And perhaps there's items in the budget that we may not use in the last year, so, but there may be more items, and that stuff was all added in. So the next meeting was on January 24th, and we had the full advisory committee at that review. And again, we went line by line on the expenses. The third meeting that we went to on this was on February 7th. It was a full committee. We reviewed the revisions that were made to it. Obviously, it's a process to go through that. And then we looked at the reserves and the fire rate discussion. So you may say, well, gee, what do we need reserves for? So a lot of the expenses, you know, are easier to understand what happens on a day-to-day basis running the fire department, whether it be power or fuel for the trucks or smaller pieces of equipment. But you heard the professionalism that we have in the fire department tonight and the work that they do of being progressive and trying to plan for what will be the future of the fire department and what will be the future needs. So we understand that there will be a need for newer trucks or better equipment, and obviously the fire hall, which you're going to hear about tonight. So in order to budget properly for that, we need to have reserves. So that's part of the budget discussion, and will also be part of the fire rate. So then the next piece is this public meeting that we have here tonight, and it's live streamed. So hopefully a lot of people are watching this at home, because we look for public engagement in this process. And you know, we'll go through the budget here tonight, and there'll be other presentations as well. So then, the next, step will be on March 6th. It will be a full committee, review of the budget, the fire rate, and, we'll approve, the budget at that time. And then we'll go on to the council and commission, and you can see that, there are 2 other meetings planned. And the last one there, meeting 7, is on March 20th, but that's the drop dead date. It may happen before that. But I think with this slide, what we want to demonstrate with this slide is that it is a long process to get to the budget. It's not something that you can do in a day and put it together and have your budget. There's a lot of work and there's a lot of moving parts to this with the fire department, the advisory commission, and the village commission as well. Next slide, please. So this is where we get our revenue. Obviously, it's the assessment times the fire rate, and this is the current rates in the municipality. And you can see that the rate for the municipality is 0.074 cents. And if you look at the other departments within the municipality of Chester, you can see that their rates are much different than ours, much higher. And so, you know, the fire department, the powers to be, did a good job of being prudent and you know, wisely spending their money. But we're finding ourselves now in a much different position. You heard about the changing climate and you know, the changes in the municipality with more people moving in. There's a lot of moving parts, and to maintain the rate of 0.74 will not allow us to meet the needs of the future. It would not even allow us to really pay for our operating expenses in the next year, keeping it at that rate. Next slide. So when we look at the fire rate, there's a lot of considerations, what you heard here tonight. So obviously we look at the day-to-day stuff, but then we look at a capital plan over 5 years and 20 years, and that's in development now, where we'll look at the apparatus and equipment that need to be replaced, and what is the cost, and when do we need to replace that type of equipment so we can properly budget for it. We need 2 trucks to be replaced by 2027, and one of those trucks was deferred from 2021. And the cost today, the estimated cost today to replace it would be 1.7 million. And of course, the new fire station, which we will need for the future. The engineering pre-design is in progress, and the estimated cost to build it is yet to be determined. So some of those expenses that you see there require us to have money put into reserves. So that's part of the budget process, to start to put money into reserves for these big projects that are coming down the road. So maintain 0.74 would net 10% more revenue, and that's based on the increased assessments. But as I said earlier, it would barely keep things, probably would not keep things with the rising costs. And it would not give us any investment for the future. So the new rate of 0.94 allows us to have 187,000 more in funds to be invested in reserves. So we're still going to be very prudent. The fire department is very well managed and will continue to be very prudent of how they spend their money. But obviously, with the change in the rate, will allow us to put money into reserves for these capital investments in the future. Next slide, please. So you can see here, we don't know what the fire rates will be in the other districts at this point, but using the 23-24 rates from the other fire departments, you can see our proposed rate of 0.094 cents would still be the lowest rate in the municipality. And I'm sure that in some of those other districts, they will face cost pressures as well, and they could very well have the rate higher than what they are today. And Milco is a little bit of an anomaly because there is the fire hydrant in that rate, so theirs is a little higher. But even without that, you can see that we have a very good rate in the proposed rate for the 24-25 year compared to everybody else in the municipality. And so if you did the comparison, so again, that's the municipality, the average for 23-24, it would be 0.15 cents. And our proposed rate for 24-25 would be 0.094 cents. So we're still almost 6 cents less than what everybody else is with our new proposed rate. Next slide. And so I'm going to call on Heather, who is going to take us through the actual budget numbers.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Heather. I'm the clerk treasurer for the village, and we do the administrative support for this committee. And I do have to stay over here because I'm also going to read the slides. So this first slide here is a bit of a one-pager that shows our revenue sources. And this is based on the 2024 preliminary assessment figures from the municipality. Noting, of course, that individual assessment appeals are still open with PBSC, so that there may be some fluctuations there. Budgets and actuals from the previous 2 fiscal years are included for reference. The blue columns are 22-23. The yellow columns are this current year, including the year-to-date budget variance. And then underneath the revenue section is just a snapshot of the operating, capital, and reserve expenses, just those 3 buckets as a snapshot. Now, just to go more detail through the expenses, I'm not going to go line by line, but I'll just do a bit of an overview. So just in looking at this, just note that the blank lines, not the ones with 0, indicate a line item from a previous budget that does not carry over into 24-25. And in the interest of time, I'm only going to comment where there is a notable change over previous years. Administration, the increase here is for the committee's corporate requirements, which were previously covered under the village. Liability insurance, this meeting that must take place annually, newspaper ads to do with committee business, those kind of things. Firefighting force, one new item is an EAP or an employee assistance program for the firefighters. An EAP is a confidential service that an individual can call for help with challenges related to workplace stress, which we can imagine can be very significant for first responders. This is a valuable addition. Training and education, there's no significant change in this section. Overall, just a slight reduction. Firefighting equipment, the estimate for vehicle fuel has increased due to the much higher prices than a year ago, as well as the sheer number of call outs our volunteers respond to. More calls is more gas. Insurance has increased with higher rates and an additional vehicle. We have a second new 511 that was very kindly donated. Personal protective equipment. Last year, we started consolidating PPE rather than having many individual line items. There's so many you can't even see here. So it just makes it a little cleaner. There is a large replacement schedule for helmets and boots that have reached their end of life it's required next year. There's also a large replacement of bunker gear scheduled. The department has applied for a grant from the provincial provider fund to hopefully offset this cost, but since we don't know if we're going to get that, we obviously have to make sure everything is covered. Communication, nothing of note here, slight reduction. Maintenance, very minimal changes here. Building in general, the increase here is for an improved cleaning service and moving the cost of the dumpster at the fire hall here that used to be covered under the village. Fireboat, this section is essentially parked other than CPI increase. The inshore boat is getting more use with the fireboat out of commission. Expectations for the fireboat service will factor into the replacement plan, so that is TBD that we will come back with. The separate fireboat account will be closed and rolled into the apparatus reserve. Capital. So this is the remainder of the fee for the engineering and architectural consultants for the new fire station, who have joined us here tonight. And they were selected by a rigorous RFP process led by our partners at the municipality. We can hear a little bit more about that later. Other consulting, that refers to anticipated needs for surveying, land transfer, public communications, that sort of thing. Breathing apparatus equipment is scheduled for replacement next year. And the new Swiftwater rescue item would outfit 4 to 5 firefighters. Okay, reserves. As we heard, this is the area of biggest concern. 86% of the projected revenue increase goes here. Fire apparatus, that is an increase over previous annual deposits, which were made mandatory under the village's reserve fund policy. Operating reserve, the Municipal Government Act requires any surplus from a given year to be deposited into reserves. So the amount for next year is TBD until we see where we net at the end. This is a new account, was the village and fire operating reserve was a single account, but the funds are being separated. That's something that's in progress currently and will be completed by the end of the fiscal. Building reserve, there hasn't been a building account for some years. And while we are hopeful there may be federal and provincial funding available for the new fire station, such grants always require a portion to come from the local level as well. We're a couple of years away from breaking ground, but we can't waste any time. Thank you. I'll turn it back over to Kurt to wrap things up, and Cody, Greg, and I are all available to answer questions at the end. Thank you. James.
I'd say I did. Kurt's off the hook.
Yeah, I think.
Thank you, everybody. Keep me all right. I'm gonna get some feedback. As Norm has mentioned and Heather mentioned, I'm the liaison between the committee and the consultants. We put an RFP out, so a request for proposals, and we had 7 groups come to us. We finally chose and awarded it to Acre and S2. Tonight we have Wendy and Stephen from Acre who have joined us, and we have Aaron from S2 who is on Zoom. So basically, you know, we're in the early stages of this whole project. What we do have is, you know, a design, preliminary design we have to look at, but the scope of the work is going to basically be working on the, you know, the existing building, its condition, a lot of the reasons why we have to replace the building. Which I think we'll go to further detail later, but it has definitely outlived its useful life. Not only is it not performing up to the standards that we need as the municipality as far as fire services, but it has just become pretty much a hazard to the fire department's health. And just really we've outgrown it. When we try to get different fire trucks or apparatus, it's costing more because they have to be made bespoke to fit into that fire hall. So that's a great problem. We do have engineering coming in to do proposed site analysis, see the best location for the building, see what kind of soil we're dealing with as well. Programming again, S2 and Acre will expand upon that, but we also have some conceptual designs that are in the early phase. Of course, community engagement, which is why we're here this evening. And as Heather had mentioned, we will be working on projected costs for the new build. A little too early in that stage to really get an idea of it. And also a schedule for what the timelines of getting the new fire hall up and running will be. That's pretty much the main focus of Acre and F2's objectives right now. And then once we've got all those details, we'll move on to the next phase. One of the big things, like I said, is going to be a lot of the issues with the fire hall just cannot be fixed or solved where it currently sits. I'm sure there's a lot of residents in the village that will be happy to see that siren be relocated. But really Valley Road, as anybody that lives in the community knows, coming in and out of Valley Road with any vehicle is difficult. It's a blind corner. Forget about having any significant apparatus do so. When we were discussing earlier, the playhouse that had an unfortunate, fire, if it weren't for the aerial vehicles, according to the fire department, it would have been a much, much, much bigger disaster. So we're thankful to the other communities that do have them, but response time is significantly impacted by that. Further to that, we are going to be engaging with the community further down when we have some conceptual designs. But right now what Acre will be presenting tonight is kind of the general site plan of the new location. Some of the major faults with the fire department that we currently have, and also some feedback and information on some of the projects that they've done. One of the reasons that we're working with S2 and Acre is they do have some experience in building fire halls, which is absolutely critical to getting this done right. This is going to be a long-term project. We want to get everything exactly how it needs to be to carry us through for several generations moving forward. So I will pass it over to Acre, and they have some slides to show you a little bit more in depth about what we're looking at. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, James. We're super excited to be part of this project and, a really transformational program and even here in Chester. So like Jim said, I'm a partner at Acre Architects. Aaron is out west with S2, and like James said, our fire station experts. So we like to partner with them on projects early on in the planning stage. We're joined by Wendy at our office as well. You might have met at the first training, and Jonah, who's joining us as well. And of note, Jonah is or was a volunteer firefighter at the Peace River branch, engine driver. Yeah. Anyway, also an asset to take the spring. So like James said, we're at the early stages of this, and this is kind of the milestone where we've now got some information about the site, and we've been looking at really that feasibility of the existing station, just to go through and uncover, make sure that it's well thought out, and looked at to make sure that like Kirk said, it's a prudent decision to move on from that. And like James said, it is. It's almost 90 years old, so it's surprising that this is operated that long in a wood frame building like that. So yes, that's off to the volunteer department operating out of there. We're going to make sure that this the new home is efficient, safe, and also really part of the community, because it is a community asset. So on the right, the slide there, you can see there we've been looking at this report with engineering as well, Dillon Consulting and CCL, as well as S2. So we're not going to go through the whole report because there's a lot of maybe dry information for tonight. But what we wanted to do is just kind of, because not everyone's probably been through that station, just pick out some of the I guess all the highlights or maybe the lowlights of that. So yeah, that's the station, as just around the corner on Central Street. It was originally designed to be part of that original village of Chester, which now, as you've heard, everything's changed over the last 100 years. There's a bigger catchment. There's new response things happening all the time, like the fires and the floods, and it's in a narrow street on Central. It's not really located, even though it's central on the older cluster. It's not really responsive to the whole community. So I think, that is a problem. The tarmac itself, really, there's some street issues with even maneuvering, backing in, street closures needed. It's not a great spot to respond from. Let alone the sirens here there. Couple other things just to touch on, we'll look at these a bit more. And I think it was James who said, the bay doors themselves are too small. We'll have a diagram of that, which results in expensive modifications to every purchased vehicle moving forward. Vehicles are just getting bigger and bigger. These doors are 10 feet, but also the bays themselves are just jammed. So if you're going through there, you can see how close the maneuvering is. You can imagine a response. People trying to get into the vehicle safely and fast and get out of there. It's a bit of a safety issue for sure. There's no separation either from, best practice, really is to keep the dirty on the dirty side, decontaminate and then move to the clean side. So there's health issues there, we're talking all the way up just about, some long-term cancer issues. And again, these are people volunteering. So, we want to create the best environment for them to be part of, and also for future retention. I think a big deal. And then just it's so tight and that there's just storage everywhere. There's a lot of storage, so there's a lot of things needed in the PPE, like Heather said. So all these things are valuable assets, and we want them to last a long time. So there's major upgrades would be needed in here just to do with ventilation alone. We won't get into that too much. I'm going to say it's, just not up to code on basic air changes and ventilation. So, it's not occupied full time, but it's just degrading all the assets and equipment. And it's also, like Chief Cody said, there's a lot of training that goes on. They're using this building. It's just not a healthy environment. And again, another requirement that's coming out more and more these days, that post-disaster requirements place to gather. Said that wildfire was the biggest on record. So the existing building doesn't meet the code for a post-disaster facility, and for multiple reasons, but just the structural loads alone, and it would require significant upgrades to just bring that up to basic code in that regard, and even to understand how much that would require almost full demolition of the structural system to do so. So, yeah, really not meeting us, which is needed these days. When he's going to touch on the site.
Everyone, thanks for coming. I just want to walk through Just want to walk through some of the major challenges with the current solution, give you a better understanding of why this isn't suitable forward and why it's at this like. So first of all, it's just the primary location that it's in, as we touched on. It was based on the original 1936 village layout. It's not suited for today's expansive city catchment area, and majority of the volunteer firefighters live outside the core of the village. So getting them to come in is also a challenge, as well as leaving the station to respond to a call. It's far away from the major route, so that adds to response times. Furthermore, when the response teams have to navigate through the narrow streets it's located in, there's on-street congestion with street parking, winter hazards with the topography of the village area, and as was mentioned earlier, there's dangerous intersections that they have to navigate through every time they respond to a call. I think it was also mentioned the noise pollution for the neighbors around there, really a dense neighborhood, and not a real location for a fire station. Zooming in a bit more to the site itself, there's a lot of challenges if we were to try to expand this building to meet the space requirements that Stephen touched on. We have a lot of site restrictions in terms of topography. You can see a large slope at the west side of that site, which would make it quite challenging to expand the building. The parking area is insufficient. They don't have sufficient water supply for filling their apparatus, so they have to go off-site to do that, which isn't very efficient as time. The tarmac is very small. You can see to scale your fire truck when they're trying to back into the base. They need to interrupt the traffic flows of the street just to back their apparatus in. Maneuvering around those streets is very challenging, as you mentioned, and we also have a circulation challenge. You can see that blue line is how they have to walk from the parking area to the front entry of the station, and they have to cross over the tarmac where fire trucks are trying to flip. So it's not a very safe position, and everyone's in a hurry to respond to a call. Pass it over to Jonathan to talk about the building itself.
So getting a look at the building here, you can see that in that top diagram, the overhead doors are too small for modern equipment. You can see it's just squeaking by in there, that truck going in. And that causes a lot of problems in terms of getting on occasions, as I was talking about earlier, and then things like operational stuff like redecking hose. You want your truck out where you can stand on top of it, get the hose, along the base, stuff like that. And then also you can see how cramped it is in the hall itself. And that leads to a lot of issues just in terms of working around it, operating around it, getting into trucks. And you think about like a call at 2 a.m., you worked all day, you head to the hall and they have to walk through a maze to get to the truck. It's small things like that that really add up to response time. And so, as you can see in that diagram, it's a big issue here. In addition to that, expansion of the existing building is inhibited by things like the site itself being sloped, and then things like the structural complexity. It's the building itself's been expanded on over years, so there's like 3 or so different structural systems going on there. And on top of that, it leads to early gear degradation. So there's no real good place to dry hose or dry equipment, and that leads to gear going bad quick. The next page here, we talk about firefighter health and safety. So a big thing in the fire focus now is this idea of hot zone, cold zone, and that just means that keeping the contaminated stuff away from the people who are clean, yes, you could say it like that. And so what that means is, like, back in the day, at least that's what they told me, back in the day, you didn't want a suit on you, it makes you look like you worked, right? You're covered in smoke, that's a good thing. But then we realized that it's really cancerous, that stuff's really bad for you. And so in terms of gear, it's all like a large percentage. And so what you want to do nowadays, and the design nowadays goes to separating where those contaminants are and separating those contaminants from the firefighters. So if you're out there having lunch, you don't want to be eating it next to the bunker gear, or if you're out there just debriefing from a call, you don't want to be up there by all the stuff that causes cancer. So it's things like that that we're trying to push for, or that can be an issue in this hall where there's no real separation between the zones. Further to that, and as Stephen talked about earlier, ventilation is a big issue. There's no ventilation in the current hall. And what that means is that those contaminants can blow through into other rooms pretty easily, pretty readily. We don't really have that solid line saying no contaminants past this area. Further to that, there's no cooling of the building. So you can imagine, as we get into hot summers now, when you have your responders training or even just debriefing or doing anything like that, there's no real way of cooling down. So that can be kind of a health and safety issue, especially in terms of comfort. And then on top of that, we can see in the building there's lots of water damage, and that generally is a bad thing in terms of like mold and mildew buildup, and that can lead to other cancer causing issues, so health issues. And then further to that, as I kind of touched on earlier, there's inadequate accessibility and circulation, and that doesn't mean just like wheelchair accessibility, which maybe is arguably important in a fire hall, but that's those 2 a.m. calls, or those, you work 5 hours, 8 hours on a call, fighting a fire, and you come back the truck in, and now you have to clean all your stuff. And that tiredness builds up. You really want to be able to get where you want to go fast. Further, the entry to the fire hall itself, when you pull up for a call, as I understand it, you have to walk in front of the responding fire truck base. And that's a big hazard when you think about the way these operations happen. So if you have, Jim was 10 hours late, or 10 minutes late, and you have the trucks pulling out, Jim is going to walk in front of an active responding truck. So that could be an issue in terms of hitting someone. I think that's a bit of a safety issue there. Further to that, there's not a whole lot of area for storage. So you can see here, the shower and the bathroom. Because there's no storage and you couldn't put anything anywhere else, things are building up in places that they really shouldn't be, and not due to operational issues, it's due to no space to put it. And with the complexity of calls and the way these calls are changing, lots and lots more equipment is needed. So as you can see, the hall doesn't quite have the facilities that I need for that. And further to that, fitness facilities are a big thing, so. On top of like honorarium based halls, you know, you're not getting paid, you want to get fit, but if you don't have access to a fitness center, you have to pay for it yourself, that's another barrier to entry. So a lot of halls nowadays are adding fitness facilities into the hall itself. That way firefighters can keep on top of their well-being, be able to respond to the calls, live longer and last longer. Finally, we'll talk a bit more about the post-disaster requirements. So as we talked earlier, it's a mix of structural types. So there's the existing building, the 1936 buildings, and there's a couple of additions on that. And so what that means is it's very hard for the structural guys to figure out, okay, how much can this beam withstand? What was it designed for? And if there's a big disaster, will this building survive? So what that means is basically we have a large exhaustive study that would have to take place in order for us to find out if the building meets post-disaster requirements. Now, those disaster requirements have changed a lot since 1936, and even in the last couple of years, it's gone up a lot. So it's likely that it will pass. And then further to that, as we mentioned earlier, a lot of those systems are hidden, so it's hard to know where or what is behind those walls. I want to pass it back to you guys here for the introduction of the new site.
So as you can hear, there's a lot of challenges with the current site and a new building that is required for the longevity of the volunteers, efficient operations, fast response times. So we're going to walk through some opportunities with the new site that's been selected for the new student and proposed site plan that we've been working on. Jeremiah,
Yes.
yes. I'm just quiet. Sorry. It's been each thing you use a second one. It's playing for the fact. So this is just an overview of the area, and you can see that where the F is located there, that's the proposed new site with great access to major roads, which will speed up response times. The next slide here, this is the proposed site located on the Nova Scotia Trunk 3 route, just next to where I believe is it the mayor's office? MLA's office is. And you can see here that we have a much wider road to work with. We're about 1.1 kilometers from the current fire station, so still great response times to inner city. But also better response times to major roads to distribute more evenly around the community. We have lots more area to have a larger building with the program that we need. As you can see, it was very congested in the current building, so adding the storage space that's required, more space for the trucks on the tarmac. So, and sorry, I should introduce, this is just an outline of where the building could go, not the footprint that's developed yet. And there's also been talks about wanting to include a water catchment system so they can fill the trucks on site and have access to additional water supply being on Stanford Lake. We also are going to locate it in a less dense area and in a less residential area, so a better location overall for a fire station. Next slide. Pass it on to Stephen.
Yeah, so, excuse me, like I said at the beginning, we're super excited about this. So, you know, I know we went through the existing station and maybe it sounded a bit down, but you know, this is really exciting opportunity for Chester and the volunteers, you know. So we just want to touch on a couple of things that we're going to be looking at. You know, this, like I said, we're still in the pre-design stage, so we're not at the stage of, you know, exciting drawings and renderings. That's going to be, you know, upcoming shortly, but we still like to get our goals aligned. So really functional. I know Kurt called it prudent, but efficiency, safety, something that's going to be easy to maintain, proper storage. You know, this is all about creating a great working environment to respond to the village's needs and emergencies. Thoughtfully organized building that allows for quick response times. So on the right, you see this is project we completed recently in Grand Falls, New Brunswick. For their, it's also a volunteer group in a small town. So, you know, the mayor told me recently, when newcomers come think about moving, he takes them to the fire station first, and then hockey rink, which we also had a kind of And then the Gordon, so they have to have waterfalls, right? So it's become one of the three things of, I guess, civic pride. It's really excited about. Sustainability is something, you know, we didn't really touch on that at the existing station, but a real opportunity, right? That existing station is almost 9 years old. The new one you're gonna build is gonna be around for a long time. So, like James said, I think James said, you know, we want to get this right at the beginning. So we're gonna be looking into sustainable site features and building features. And just a tighter building envelope as well to lower long-term energy costs, which like Heather mentioned, are going up each year. So you're gonna get better value about doing a quality building. And then it's just the health and safety, right? So that, you know, like Joan was mentioning, coming back after long hauls, it's, you know, some crazy situations that the team would get into. And, you know, you can see down on the bottom right, the image just of that, you know, just the vehicles are bigger, there's just more room needed, and just a nice, safe place. You're not gonna be tripping over stuff, just responding to basic calls, which, you know, it's impressive how many calls this group responds to. I also need my classes. I was born in the 70s. So yeah, growth and retention, that's something that we're going to be thinking about as we go forward. You know, I think, you know, call it beauty or interest or however you like, but there's some pride in fire stations historically around the world. It's just something that anchors the community. So we want to find a balance between efficiency and also something that people are to enjoy working in, enjoy driving by. So we're going to be looking at, you know, what is the character of Chester? How can we incorporate some of that into this building? Because it's going to be your building. And then of course, that long-lasting disaster resilient building, you know, climate's changing. We want to get something here that it's going to be flexible, adaptable, but a really quality build for Chester. Yeah, so that's something we're super excited about doing. But early stages, that's what we want to achieve.
So you can see the proposal for the new site concept. We're still working on the building footprint, of course, and planning the interior spaces. But this gives you an idea of how the building could be situated on the new site and have a nice public interface with the public realm. Have a large tarmac where they can operate more safely, more efficiently with their fire trucks, and have drive-through bays that allows them to maneuver that better and have access to their apparatus. So we have 6 bays included here that would accommodate the new apparatus that they were speaking of earlier, as well as the new boat that I think is planning to be purchased. We have more parking opportunities on the site to accommodate all of the responders, and as well as some public parking at the entrance there, where you don't have to walk across a tarmac that has fire trucks pulling out. Less of a safety concern for sure. We also, as we mentioned previously, have easy access to major roads from this site, and on-site training opportunities with lots of extra space, as you can see down the hill on the site. Anything you want to add to that, Stephen?
Yeah, I think just looking at the climate effect, like you said, you know, they're going to be able to maneuver within, say, that 75-foot boundary, so they're not going to have to come onto the public highway at all, right? They can maneuver safely, do some training, but also have the drive-through bays. But also just that this site allows for the separation of, you know, either the public coming in to do the training or to use them on, or the actual volunteers coming in for a call. They're not crossing paths, it's a separate entry. So again, a safer situation for all. So they would come in a separate entry entirely, come in, go through, get changed, and they're right at the vehicles. So again, it's a great site to be able to speed up those times and create a safe environment for the volunteers. That's this. I don't know if we're taking questions all at the same time. If anyone has it.
So at this time, does anybody have any questions on my intro to the committee or? Sorry, questions to Kirk and Heather regarding the budget or any questions regarding the sort of conceptual design for the new fire hall? There, anybody? Carl? Go ahead.
Can you go back one slide, Disney? No, one more, yeah. All those little rectangles, are they parking spots?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're not parking on the tarmac in any way? You're
No,
Off
no,
the tarmac?
exactly. All of the fire responders, volunteers will come around the back, but those two red arrows, they'll go right in, hit the change room right away.
Yeah, so anybody who's on site with their own vehicle of some sort
Yeah.
is gonna use the rectangle, is that correct?
Correct, exactly.
Thank you.
No other questions?
Easy crowd tonight.
You know, encouraging. Yeah, thanks very much on behalf of the committee for everybody in attendance this evening and folks online. We certainly will be looking forward to moving forward and providing more information to the community as things develop to ensure that everybody's well informed about where we're going with the new fire hall and the fire department in general, as we discussed and touched on many of the things over the evening that we believe is critical to our community and making sure that our firefighters and volunteers are well taken care of and equipped to serve our community and help the community in the future. And again, we thank them for their continued volunteer support. I leave it open to anybody else. Anybody have any questions, statements, comments? Thanks very much. Thank you.